I've been thinking a lot about animated movies lately. It's gotten relatively easy to make them in recent years, and it's such an interesting and creative way to convey messages to an audience through the medium of film. There are a lot of things that people do with animated movies that you really wouldn't be able to mimic in a live-action format, for example. It's really great when live-action movies use practical effects, but at a certain point, there's only so much you can accomplish with that, and you start having to resort to crappy CGI that just doesn't look believable. With that said, I'm not sure that people are necessarily using the animated film format correctly anymore. You have big companies like Disney, Illumination, DreamWorks that release these animated films every year, even more sometimes. But how many of those movies are actually any good? Not many of them. I've been thinking about a lot of these things, and I've been complaining about it on Twitter. But instead of just complaining about it on Twitter, I thought I'd complain about it to you guys too. That's right, last time we talked about animated YouTube channels, now we're talking about animated movies. Movies for babies. Really branching out, aren't we? But you see, I used to be a baby too. In fact, I used to love animated movies like Ratatouille, The Incredibles, Monsters, Inc. These movies were great because they not only explored deep themes, but they also conveyed them in ways that I could understand as a kid. And they're padded with humor that I can appreciate now as an adult. Pixar used to be on an absolute roll. For the first 15 years, virtually all of their movies were fantastic. At least up until they released Up. Up was released in 2009, and a lot of people consider that Pixar's last great film. Sure, Toy Story 3 was good, but I feel like that heartwarming ending stops people from asking the question, do we need a third Toy Story? And now they're making a fourth one, which kind of just ruins that ending anyway. I'm not going to rehash the Pixar subject because there's a great video by Nitpicks that you can watch where he basically covers the same points that I would. But his video is not going to make sense unless you've watched mine to the end and clicked all the ads. Long story short, at some point Pixar decided to stop making great movies, and you might be asking yourself, well, wait a minute, everyone was eating the shit out of those Pixar sandwiches. Why doesn't someone else just pick up the slack? Some other studio has to be cranking out those great movies now, right? Well, yeah, but not at all, actually. To be clear, I'm not saying that there aren't any great animated movies being made. All I'm saying is that for every Lego movie or Into the Spider-Verse, you're seeing about 10 Boss Babies and Emoji movies.
Oh, I'm never eating another piece of candy ever again.
Seriously, besides Into the Spider-Verse, name one other great animated movie from 2018. The correct answer is The Nut Job 2: Nutty by Nature. Yes, the quantity of animated films has increased in the last decade, but the quantity of good animated films is just as rare, if not even rarer, than when Pixar was churning them out. So what's the problem? Well, it's not that people don't know how to make good animated films, they just don't want to. I think this all comes back to the target audience that these people are trying to attract. When kids make the decision to see animated films in the theater, they're usually making it off of very limited information. It's usually just based off the trailer, like if there was a funny joke that they heard or if they found the character particularly appealing. That's usually enough to sway them, and with kids younger than the age of 8, for example, they probably don't even take that into account. When an adult makes a decision to see a movie, they make it off of much broader information. They think about critic scores, they think about what their friends are saying, the premise, they think about the cast, the director, and the actors who are in the movie, and so on. It's not necessarily all of these things, but adults generally put more thought into what movie they're going to see than kids, because adults have more of a concept of the resources that are being expended here, namely time and money. But here's the thing, parents don't make the decision on whether or not they're going to see a movie based on whether or not they want to see it. All that really matters is if their kid wants to see it, and sometimes it's not even that. And even with movies like Ratatouille, which is appealing to both adults and kids, it took me a little while to figure out why it was so well made and understand all the humor behind it. I had to compare it to other movies, and this is a process that takes years to go through. But pretty much once DreamWorks gets you in the theater, they can show you whatever the f they want. They have the 2 ticket sales from the parent and the kid, so why would they bother showing you something worthwhile?
Don't you know anything about sarcasm?
I think I had a sarcasm once.
And this brings me to the latest sin, the latest insult to animated film, The Ugly Dolls movie. The Ugly Dolls movie illustrates everything that I just said in the most blatant fashion possible. And it hasn't even come out yet. Like most animated movies, it has a star-studded cast, which for some reason includes Kelly Clarkson. Good lord, Kelly, how did it come to this? You went from bangers like Mr. Know-It-All and Stronger to being the spokesperson for ugliness, I guess? Although I doubt that anyone's looking too far past the payment portion of their contract when it comes to being invested in this movie's story. Not that I blame them. With this tagline, a classic underdoll story, oh, you can already tell just how few shits these producers give from the beginning. Not that the premise does this movie any favors either, which according to Wikipedia is the following. Moxie and her ugly doll friends travel to the other side of the mountain where Uglyville nestles and find the town of perfection, a place where everyone is perfect. There they encounter Lou, who gathers recruits to train for perfection and ultimately find a child in the real world. Eventually, the ugly dolls learn that being oneself is more important than perfection. Wow. What a bunch of horse shit. This plot description has the substance of a 3rd grade book report. And the entire plot of this movie is described in 3 sentences? Are you kidding me? You didn't even try. Like, I'm not even kidding. This movie is so empty that Common Sense Media has already written their review for it. And it hasn't come out yet. They haven't even seen the movie and they know exactly how it's going to be. Dear God, are these people even going to pretend like they care at this point? You might as well have written, character thinks she isn't special, but she just needs to discover that she is special. And I get that even before this movie, the whole idea of being yourself has been beaten to death, but they've taken the same stale formula and made it even more vapid. At least with some of those other movies I mentioned, they tried to make it a little bit original, throw in a couple of funky creatures or squeeze some plot points out of an obscure lore from the source material. But what is the source material for Ugly Dolls? They're plushies that look kind of weird? Is that the entire gimmick? I guess it's worth mentioning the trailers while we're at it. I don't need to show you much because it's the classic cookie cutter animated film trailer that most trailer studios shit out for this type of movie. The 2 parts of the trailer that stuck out to me were when the red doll tells the pink doll to find her own truth.
I know I'll find the perfect kid for me, but I'm starting to wonder, with no evidence, no proof, what if it's not true?
Find your own truth.
What the fuck does that even mean? Don't teach our children moral relativism, you sick bastards. And then there's this doozy.
Welcome to the Institute of Perfection, where only the best will meet their perfect human match.
You're an engineer/model.
My accessories will make me different.
You're a lawyer/model.
I'm an individual, exactly like the rest of you.
Wow. Way to completely deflate the one argument your own movie was trying to make. Which brings me to the movie's characters, I guess. Yeah, you know, for a movie about uniqueness and individualism, there's nothing unique or individual about any of these characters. With animated movies, the appearance of the character should help ground you so you understand the character better. Mike Wazowski's size, for example, makes his pluckiness more believable, and Randall's reptilian design goes perfectly with his scheming nature and shiftiness. No, I'm not saying that the character's appearance should be their personality, but there's nothing about these ugly dolls that offers any type of dynamic at all with their appearance versus their personality. Even from a purely visual standpoint, there's nothing about these characters that sets them apart. If I grayscaled a picture of these characters, are you honestly telling me you can tell them apart? And even with all of that being said, this is missing the most glaring issue. These characters aren't even all that ugly. I feel like I'm insulting everyone at this point by even considering the inevitable argument of, oh, it's a kid's movie, you're not a kid, so why do you care? If you even want to call it an argument. The very fact that great animated films exist is proof that corporations can do better, because they'd rather churn out the trite garbage that shows up in theaters every month instead of actually putting effort into their work. I guess my broader point is, who doesn't benefit from studios making good animated movies? I hate to get all preachy on you guys, but do we really want our generation to be represented by trolls and ugly dolls? Don't we want kids to have good animated movies that can serve as more than just a diversion? Don't we want films to convey more complex messages than being an individual? Ironically, these companies which leech so desperately from nostalgia fail to understand that an appealing, memorable product is what made the franchise be worth caring about in the first place. All I'm saying is it's a two-way street. Animated movie studios are only going to stop making garbage movies if we stop seeing them. Parents, demand more from your animated movies because it is possible to do better than this, but nobody's going to do better than this so long as this makes just as much money.
What's your name?
Wedgehead?
I love literal naming. Isn't that right, gibberish cat?